Okay. So you do have the option to.
Switch the stream.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just see if that worked. It's flickering, so just keep it on camera.
Okay.
That's odd. It's working fine earlier. This is 1080i. Okay, it's good. Yeah,
Yes,
still flickering. That's fine. Keep it on camera for now. I'll just go and check it. But yeah.
Channel 2, right?
Yep.
Okay.
On 2, I'll zoom out a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I'll just push the monitor a little bit.
Can you I can speak into this for you. Look, check.
Yep.
This is not picking up.
The audio is not going through.
Go ahead.
Check.
Right here, so that tells you that it's. Yeah, so it's fine. You're gonna be a checking 1 2 hey. That one, you're still going in. So if you see that one going through, you should be fine.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like this one better. Carsten, oder? This sound loud? One, two. Hi, Carsten, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us. Yes. Thank you.
Started. Got my mic here. Good morning, everybody. I'm Carson Wade,
I'm Thorsten Schwesig.
and we're here to talk to you about getting open source software development in the community cloud as part of our first project. So let's get started. And part of this, the subtitle, I think, is interesting, something to point out that not only do we want to talk about why open operations matter, but the difference between just getting free resources and what we're actually providing here. Why someone would want to commit effort. I'm gonna walk forward a little bit. Is it loving someone? Perfect. Thanks. So today's topics. We're going to talk about operate first a little bit, just a couple minutes, explain what we mean by open operations, what that process is, talk for a few minutes about who's using it and why they're doing so, and use that as a place of a way to get started with some inspirations. Then the next chunk of time is going to be Torsten is going to take us through the next steps of how the service is onboarded, so how an open source software project would include. Well, so all that means. So first, just a little bit about Open Source. So what we're doing here is we're building an all open source community cloud, and because we want to learn about how to make software and all the cloud operations look better by running those services in an open operations environment. That's all we do. So in sort of normal open source development, which is a funny thing to say now because 20 years ago, there was no such thing, right? There wasn't people who think it's normal. But in a regular process, this is how the chain goes, is that you've got an upstream development process, and that goes into what's getting into a testing environment, you do continuous integration. And on the other side of that, you do a deployment, and where does the deployment go? It goes to your users, your customers. So at that point in time, those users can then use, they've got a hold of either experimental software or release software, they can make a direct connection back to the upstream, and developers, and now make improvements and feedback. That's kind of the power of open source software in a nutshell, right? So what we're doing with the operate first methodology is essentially the same process in terms of starting with the upstream development, going through the same testing process, but then there's another step after the CI/CD, and that is to bring it to the cloud environment. And that is a full production live environment with all the other software that they're running cloud. It's not a test instance that's brought up, tested, and then brought down. It's an ongoing environment to be running in. And then it's delivered to your users. So it actually gets another layer, has a chance for another layer of testing, another layer of improvements from what you learn in that community cloud environment to go back. This is all for yourself. And users can write early to see that and so forth. So of course, users get their regular chain of feedback to the developers, and actually, in many cases, a chance to get to the software faster because they're not having to do heavy installs. They're just using a cloud service that's an experimental feature, seeing how that feature is working. And in addition, it gives them an opportunity to test and improve that software in their own environments while it's still being developed, so they can provide feedback on improving it, and they can get their own software so that the day the service or whatever releases and changes that they're using, your environment is all to date as well. And at the same time, other open source projects that are involved in their software are in there as well. And they're learning and they're improving adding knowledge. So that community cloud space becomes a community practice and an actual place where things can be done, and we're delivering alpha services. You want to think about what's the service level expectations, like an alpha service. We're not trying to keep to a commercial kind of So in order to put this together, from this operating first idea of which you said asset and all of that, we put together a project, an open source project basically. It's about opening operations. And this is open sourcing operations. I'm trying to change the language because open source is not a verb. So now we're revising the nouns, but opening is a verb. And that capital O opening especially. So you'll see that kind of throughout. But essentially, the idea is that if we, as we're saying, if you run your software in production before you deliver it to your users, customers, operating in that environment, And then we built a prototype operating first environment at operate-first.cloud, where you can go operate first and talk about it. I think Bing will work as well, like a few others, that looks good, the same results. And then we had to do that because it's great to talk about a concept, but when you want to actually show that your idea is going to do something, just like we're saying, come test and improve your software, but we're testing and improving our concept with everyone else. And that's part of the implication here is to, we're looking for open source projects that want to use this environment. Yes. And so we're now prepared to, especially with kind of a high touch at this point in time, entry to bring projects aboard. Of course, that's not ideal. It should be much more self-service, and that's what we're building towards. We don't have that because we're not an existing cloud the way a commercial cloud might be that has all this stuff there for the last 15 years. This is the stuff we're all developing together in the open because it hasn't existed. And the same thing with SRE practices is that we're developing these in the open. We're inviting and arranging a lot of participation from Red Hat SRE teams to deliver conceptual documents, ADRs, architectural decision records, and so forth, blueprints on how to do things, so you can take and create your own cloud-based software that you've got. And so recently we've been, as we've been working through this kind of message, trying to make it people, this particular idea about how to set of principles, this is probably the first audience who's actually seen this. I think Nick tweeted this out last week, these 4 principles. It's a lot of words for everyone to get across from the room, and I think it's just the first time it's been out, but I don't want to just read the slide cold, but I'll go ahead and do that and add to it. So, operate first groups a few concepts, relying on standard definitions of open and open source and open work. That's what I was saying before about the opens, right? So the keys are operate, open, governance, and hybrid. Those are the 4 principles. But that would mean operate, we build software optimized to run as a service and allow others to run it as a service easily, including documenting how we operate it, how we operate the cloud environment itself. Open. We develop open source practices, tooling, and documentation, so actual software, content, and everything, that allows us to build and manage our software, incorporate lessons we've learned from operations back into code, automate wherever possible, and contribute to open source communities. Governance, and this is a key important part, is that something that's always missing when there's closed cloud environments, you have governance that can be done there. So we're working on fostering an inclusive, respectful, and collaborative community through clear standards and accepted practices, for example, codes of conduct, so participants are empowered to contribute. And the last one is hybrid. And this is just being another rubric measure by, right? We ensure that there is no dependency on tooling to the cloud environment we are operating in by always verifying our software and management tooling works identically on at least one other platform, another cloud or a private data center and so forth. So these are aspirational. Our prototype environment is mostly like this. We're just trying to be your conceptual and that's the direction we're trying to get. These QR codes are also useful if we need to go after the logo. So just a quick little bit about what's been happening in Operate First, who's actually using this stuff. OS Climate is a perfect example of this. They're an open source collaboration community, and they're building data and analytics software platforms and around modeling financial markets and global investments to consider climate change, because all of the models don't consider climate change. So this is both a community of practice and development around data science that's happening. And they're creating a global data commons of all of the models that they've got, and then being able to provide some predictive analysis around each other. And so those workloads, so the workloads are running on top of Open Data Hub, which is the upstream of Red Hat's Open Data Science product, and they're all running in our community cloud. And so this team's been doing this for most of the last year, I think. And so it's providing them the ability to quickly scale up and bring in members of the community to doing work directly as developers or as data scientists without having to learn a whole bunch of new tooling and a whole bunch of new processes. And it allows them to do work from idea all the way to innovation, all the way to the durable artifacts, like codes and documentation. So essentially, I just was looking to see how these 4 community governance software operations match up. I mean, these are another way of looking at the aspects of those 4 principles from before. But in essence, it's allowed them to come up an open source community that's effectively getting things done without spending a lot of time making decisions about which tools to use and who's going to pay for the AWS bill. So I wanted to go into I'm going to invite Torsten to come in and walk us through a little bit about what the community cloud consists of, so we'll help understand when we get into the next part of this, and I'm going to start doing this stuff with it.
So as with all the different principles before, community cloud is for something creating workloads with like these huge projects, open data hub, was its artificial intelligence with checking different dependencies on software development and these are some other things that are maybe but we're also running management automation on Operate First. Few examples here, ACM, IOCD, and we're also using it for doing everything as a service. Operators Kafka to check our GitHub Operate First apps repository. You will see all these different apps projects that are running on there. And besides the governance aspect, first, we're trying to build good governance for open source, for open community, and how to build it by itself. So you can also go there, find blueprints, see our community, you can follow our governance ideas, and if you already this.
It's an example of a really interesting problem that we're working on there, if you haven't realized this already. Part of the model here is that we provide telemetry, right? They did all the data that you locate with the PII, the private information, plus identifiable information of the people who are users on it. How are we going to scrub and anonymize data so we can look at that? These are problems that people have actually had a reason to tackle, I think, to some degree. That's exactly what we're working on today.
So what beside all this concept, everything behind, where can I start? And for this, with all these different workloads and operations and the service we have, we're kind of including all kind of personas and everything. Everybody can join that and for these two examples, I'm coming up in the next few minutes. I'm focusing on the developer. So 2 examples to make. One is kind of hopefully one already. Like GitHub organization as code. Permissions as a service, it's already something more. You can get more into it. So this is how Kubernetes is using GitHub to manage the organization. And this goes for people who are not familiar with this. In YAML files, you can set public or private, where you can administrators or members that they can contribute people. And what we did operate first, but some people did operate first, is permissions as a service. So instead of running your own services and for your own code, you can just go to permissions here. You can your GitHub organization will be managed by this, and then you can merge the different PRs and all the settings will be automatically added to your organization. And this is what actually we're doing already with Operate First all the time. All our management of members and if you want to do something, some of our repositories in the apps, just create a PR, use YAML file, and later our working. Yes. That's a repository application and either created by yourself as a service or you can just use it for your organization. The thing I want to go more into it is.
Well, I just wanted to touch on the point as we were going through. So a portion of the room understood everything that was just said in there, right? In terms of how that was going to be beneficial for you. And some portion of the room did not. And one of the things that's important to us is a lot of people don't know what a Git is and what a hub is and how to make a pull request. And when they hear that, it makes them feel like this is so today, it's, our documentation and our processes are, it's a GitOps process, there's a lot to teach and learn from people. We're working on improving the documentation, but the goal is to make it so that data scientists can come in and do data science. It's not have to worry about any of the stuff. So there's a gap between the intention and where we are today, but we're closing that all the time. So I want to encourage you that if you felt like this doesn't sound like you, there's a barrier to come in. That's it before. We're doing an extra high touch right now because it's helping us improve documentation and automation so that we don't have to have as much of a.
So I'm not going deeper into this one because the next example, and any good sell you all know her from the data stuff here. She actually wrote an amazing blog on one of her first blog. You can easily follow and using a lot of stuff in this OpenShift and how to deploy things and how to use RSD. So she used Jaeger to get telemetric data from, in this case, a short web application. So this is a basic idea. The distributed tracing that we run because we have containers and different apps running and Jaeger can collect all of these. If you guys names in the same namespace, it's pretty easy because and then you can just connect with them. So why this example is in my opinion a really good one for starters, because you will work with OpenShift. You can do an operate first without setting up somewhere else. Everything is there. Even better, the open telemetry libraries or ideas are already in the Reddit tracing platform, in the Reddit tracing data integrated our smart contracts, easily start there. And you can do all this with deploying with RCP. If you get the whole flow of people from data shift and without weakness. And showtime in this case means I'm just going for two of steps. So she made it really easy, like how you get into everything, how to set up your YAML files, and just give you a short, quick overview of this with answers. So in the same namespace, applications, and when you open them, the data will just be collected as a single content. And she all this in her little repository. We have our open telemetry repo, where all the different files from Lega to Telco, that's the name of the project namespace, is in there. And at the end, we can just easily go to our operate first OpenShift cluster in Smart and find all the different settings. In the different YAML files, where you see how easy you can connect the two lines of code. Everything. And if you want to make it visible, I'm not going into any chart stuff here because it's some other data science yesterday and today. But an easy point. You can easily follow the different web pages and the different data that's collected here. And yeah, basically, if you follow her blog file, the blog, then you can 20 minutes, it took me 20 minutes or 25 minutes. Thanks for setting up this. And that's a really short impression. If you want to follow the link that's here, I think the presentation is also online, so just follow all those steps. It will be easy. Well, it'll be running in a few minutes, and you all get your own update. And this is at the end, the link page. And for everything that we just did, you can follow our Twitter, you can follow our blog. And mostly I'm recommending going to our repository because there's some stuff happens normally. You can sign on and getting all the help from for example, me and all of other on the team.
And so there are a lot of there are actually a lot of good recorded presentations out there right now. Our YouTube channel has a number of different pieces going on. things that you can look at to see exactly the demos of the processing. So we chose not to get into that today because we didn't have to fight with us, struggle with anything, with any network issues and take up a lot of time with it. But what's nice about using the blog as a walkthrough is this is how documentation gets created in the community to start with things and to start to refine them out. So this gives you with an open source project with a mindset about what you want to do, try out, something to walk through and model. And if you write down the steps and help us get that published, then we will be adding to the documentation. That's what that's about. But other than that, I think that's. So yeah, that's our presentation. We wanted to do a couple minutes less of questions. We got a mic in the back up, ready to go. Some stick hand up. Everything's crystal clear. Yes, still clear.
Thanks. So I'm a big fan of Operate First, and I'm really glad to see all the open source communities projects that kind of seem to have started to aggregate on your community cloud. Very interested in the distributed telemetry. Do you have any stories of what people have been able to discover about how their services are running by using the distributed telemetry, or even just, were there any astonishing discoveries when they actually tried to run their software on a real cloud?
Did it come to mind for you, or? One of the, it's a good question because that's exactly the stuff that we're trying to track right now and get the stories from people about what's going on. So I know, I don't remember what the and then it doesn't come to mind, the OS Climate story. Because there have been several things that have come from OS Climate and gone into Open Data Hub and gone into the Red Hat product side. Don't think any of those things run. So, and part of this is that we don't have a full telemetry stack up and running. So then you got a dashboard back. Yeah, these are the first steps, and so like the kinds of gaps that we're getting from people right now are the gaps between, when you thought it was going to take to get your service running and what it actually takes to get it running, and your knowledge is around the running. Back in the back. Next question. Oh yes, go ahead.
So this is very interesting to me as someone who's had to deal with applications and had to figure out how they're supposed to be deployed because nobody else does, including the app developers themselves, especially with a lot of open source projects where people are doing this quote-unquote cloud native kind of approach of developing applications. Have you guys started figuring out outreach approaches to getting open source projects to start looking at, as part of their development process, as part of them actually making their applications and whatever, to consider first, coming to Operate First and build their applications with the full life cycle of an application as part of their development thought process?
And so in fact, you're experiencing that plan right now in that, I started working on the project about a year and a quarter ago, and could see immediately what the possibilities were, but I also knew my experience with open source projects that just saying, hey, we've got a cool platform, come use it, and making a campaign around that is not necessarily taking the documentation, right? So what we focused on instead was prior, and also because it was going to be a painful experience to know, right? And so we focused on Red Hat, so we knew we could ask to suffer the pain and doing that. So now this is the first time when we're starting to feel like we're beginning outreach because we wanted to get a point where, and then also making it really clear that this isn't just like an easy to use free resource that you can do cool things with. There's a lot of ease to use with it, but there's going to be some steps involved, some pain involved, but we're all going to be. So this is the open implementation, and I think in essence, it's basically to me it's all about the documentation and making sure that when you come in, because a lot of people come in and just don't have. You say they just make a PR, and that's like, so it's not. I want to make sure that we're really careful about that stuff.
Yeah. Some of the impression I got from having to work with, random open source projects that are quote unquote cloud native and having to deploy them in, like, say, our OpenStack or Kubernetes, whatever, is that they don't actually know how you're supposed to run it, and the what works on my machine gets real hurtful right at that point, because they don't really have things like a practice of how to run it, instrument it, things of that nature. So that's something that I would like to see come out as a positive result of this effort.
And again, the two aspects are to both define like the conceptual answers, like you need to have these elements, and then actually do make opinionated choices about those elements in the environment we're providing, so we can go from theory to practice.
Hey, thanks very much for your presentation. Two quick ones. So it wasn't quite clear to me if the intention was for the service or applications to run long term, or if they hit a particular maturity point that they were intended to offboard, stand up their own cloud infrastructure at that point.
Oh, it's a good question, but it's like a right idea, but it's a little bit different from my perspective. I think
Okay.
we're not. We are asking. We're providing resources to open source projects. And at that point, like we all need workloads. If you bring your software here, that software needs to be running and testing something. Like I'm not going to go recruit users for your software. Right? And so there's an expectation that you have to be. So I can see a lot of ways that people can be doing this, like using it to provide an experimental feature off this cloud, or just various other things like that. But we don't have a plan to lifecycle things off per se.
Okay.
But because it's more, and I think we're probably, now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking that that's probably the part that's something that we add to the onboarding process, is to get a lifecycle discussion with the project and creating a set of each one, so we know what's going to happen with those ones. I mean, theoretically, because somebody could keep developing a service and keep adding to it, and we just keep running it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it could run forever. And I think I was just interested if there was a particular maturity point at all.
And not yet, but that's a good thing. We might find a painful experience when we don't.
And just second one for me, just around maturity and observability. I was just looking at it. You were talking. It looks like you have there's a shared Grafana instance, I assume, that any of the service maintainers have access to, and they'll define their own dashboards and their own metrics and stuff like that. Is that the case?
So I have a feature request out that's on, it's an issue to describe the feature, right? That's a project page.
Yeah.
There's two aspects that we want to see. One is the front, what the world sees. So when the world comes in, they'll say, whatever your project is, and then you can see how it's constructed, what the clusters are, whatever set of things that this project wants to show to the world.
Yeah.
And then there's the dashboard that are available to the developers. And I think we just started to get some of the clusters that are showing. It's actually on the community cloud page right now. I think live on the website. But there's a difference between what we want to provide and where we're at right now. So I can't.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the.
Do you help them define their SLOs and things like that, or at least provide links off to other best practices around defining SLOs?
It's a great question that you get. So, for example, we have a member of our community is essentially is the New England Research Cloud that is going live this fall to be students from Harvard that are schools up here. And so that group is an operations group that has been running old school IT stuff for a long time. So we're going to be working through longer term discussion around an SLO process with them. So not like have this up by Friday. And as you I'm sure are aware, but I'm basically updating to point it out. Some of the contributions that we've been getting from the SRE team that Red Hat has been around finding SLOs. So there's now a full SLO bootstrap guide to use when you want to have those discussions to work with a team. So when you're using that, to have those discussions with that team. So that's like the first run through of something that's at that level. And that's a big piece. And then I think now that I've got that framework, we're going to be adding a lighter weight version of it for an open source project. Isn't too much, I think, a lighter weight discussion. Good operations environment, right? So then we'll start to kind of iterate off of it. So the goal is to be able to provide what doesn't exist in the world, or point to if there's a best practice that's out there, somebody's written up a great way to do something, then that's perfect. But otherwise, as it turns out, there's not a lot of open source or open content around SRE practices.
Yeah. No, appreciate it. Great talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Sure. There's another hand over here.
A little bit of my question, which was, I was wondering about some of the origins and some of the things that we were taking direct inspiration from in terms of the way architects, the architecture and the best practices.
Yeah, and I think a really important, I forgot to mention one, was I'm wearing my open infra shirt, right? We're an open infra labs project, and that's part of the dynamic is that from the cloud, before cloud native, the people who started cloud native, some of them were part of the OpenSec founders and part of other things. This concept of how running open operations is something that has been going on for a while. There's a number of different communities, HighPod Foundation, Apache Software Foundation, they all run open infrastructure that essentially everything but the passwords, is available, and for the order business as well. There's a lot of projects that do. And so it's a model that's been out there for a while. This idea of taking something up to the cloud level. I feel like it was kind of a natural next step that was going to happen, and it started to get articulated this year as we go through how we're taking how to actually create the open cloud and take it to the next level.
I feel like that's very important because there is a sign out there for closest operation style.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think it's something that people are interested in working on this stuff who do the work daily, of course, on a practice level, but also in terms of like the disruption of the industry, you can kind of expect that something like this is going to happen. All the private cloud providers have to expect some level of disruption on this point, right? And so, and this is how we all do it as we get together. Looks like we are definitely past time. If there's any other questions as we're hanging out here, I'd be happy to take any more. Otherwise.
Yeah, one question from me. One observation is interesting one choice for operate first. It's refreshing. And the other one is like I work with Red Hat SSO and Keycloak team. We were very interested in operate first too. So someone probably will reach out. And the other thing is like, how is this different from RH OBS? Red Hat or Observability?
Observability, is that a product
Yes.
side of or yeah, I don't actually know all the details of features of the product, but I think one of the aspects is that one thing that is probably different, regardless, is that we're running bare metal, running OpenShift on bare metal, Kubernetes on bare metal, and are working on, and that's something we did with other services on bare metal that made sense to opt or something. That was what somebody wanted to do, wanted to maintain. So we definitely have access to be able to provide more deeper insights, more telemetry than we can running an abstracted public cloud environment. I think it's as much about the potentials, and then there's whatever the components are of that would be, either they are already installed in the community cloud, or they could be installed in order to make that happen. Thanks. Okay. Like I said, thanks everybody.